I'm ready when you are.
All right, so I'm going to test my mic. Regina, if you want to mute yours. Kaonis, can you hear me? Testing, testing.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, thanks, bud. All right, I'm going to get some of the stuff out of the way, and then we'll go ahead and get started here. Okay, so you guys are kind of brave. You came to something with the word regulation in it. So proud of all of you. Um, so we're at week 6 of this spring's GovCon series. So we haven't planned anything yet, but if you um, email me or if you get on the library's mailing list for small business stuff, then you'll see everything coming out. But this is week 6. So if you've been with us the whole time, you've been from the very beginning where we did introduction, we talked about certifications, and we talked about market research, and we talked about all kinds of things. And today we're kind of at the most, I would say, maybe a little dry just because it's so much information, but very important because we don't want anybody to get in trouble. And yeah, so we're going to talk about some essential regulations, but even more, I'm going to tell you where to find the information that you need. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. So my name's Gina with Apex. I'm here with Regina from the library, and this is GovCon compliant. So I'm a visitor here from the Apex Accelerator program. So we're part of the University of Missouri Extension, which is like the community education part, and I'm in the business development program. There's an Apex in every state, at least one. So we have 5 here in the state of Missouri, 4 regions, and there's 5 of us right now. And we serve about 1,400, 1,500 clients every year. So, all right. So the things that we help with are specific to government contracting. So when you think Apex, think government. I know that doesn't really go together, but just try to remember. If you need government stuff, that's us. So training and education, which is kind of like what you're here doing right now. The second square, registration assistance. So if you've been here for the last couple, you might recognize words like sam.gov or Missouri Buys. Those are registrations that are required in order to sell your stuff to the government. And then we do kind of one-on-one business counseling and procurement strategies. So things like helping you with market research, figuring out who buys what you sell, things like that. So we do group stuff like training and education, and then these 3 are more one-on-one. So if you want to sign up for Apex, there's this website at the very bottom, moapex.org. Since this is our last time together for a little bit, go ahead and type that in. Hey, girl, how are you? And just look us up that way. All right. So everything is current as of today. So I've been doing a deep dive on this week. They are doing some changes. I'll kind of talk about that with some of the regulations, but most of it stays the same. So if you have taken any trainings on regulations in the past, most of it is the same, just maybe some numbers have changed. So everything is current as of today. If you ever have any questions, you can always email me, call me, let me know. And if I need to refer you to somebody else, then I will do so. All right. So these are things we're going to talk about. Talk a little bit about procurement and why they have these regulations. We're going to talk about something called the FAR, which is not, if you're from Southern Missouri, like fire, but the FAR, F-A-R. We'll talk about some common ones that you're going to see a lot. We'll talk a little about state and local. We're all probably from Missouri, probably from the St. Louis area. So I'll show you some examples, but those really kind of depend on where you're trying to sell to. And then just some closing thoughts. So if you've been with us before, try to keep it positive. And what I don't want anybody to be is overwhelmed because it can be a lot of information. Think about going to the DMV. The government has rules, right? Paperwork rules, signature rules, insurance rules. So as we go through this information, you're going to see this blue more info button at the bottom. So if the slide applies to you, because not every slide is going to apply to everybody, if that slide applies to you, when you get the presentation, click those more info links to get more specific about that rule, okay? And afterwards, if you have questions, if you're like, okay, that was just too much, we can do more of a deep dive, but today's kind of really just an overview because we only have an hour together. Okay. All right, so the word procurement. The government doesn't really make things themselves. They buy it from us. Big businesses, small businesses, medium businesses, they buy it from other people, right? The government doesn't make too much on their own anymore. Here's what they're looking for. They're looking for quality. They're looking for competitive pricing because they're using our tax dollars. And they're looking for on-time delivery because honestly, when they go through the whole process of picking somebody, they don't want to do it again. So they want to get their stuff on time. All right. So, like I said, the government relies on private businesses to provide the goods and services that they need, which is a little bit of everything and a lot of some things. What we're going to talk about today are compliance rules. Both government employees and contractors like us must follow these rules. And the reason is so that things stay fair. What you don't want is like buying that is like full of corruption, cronyism, if you've heard that word before. That's what we're trying to avoid here. That's why we have these rules. We want to make the playing field as even as possible. Okay. So why is this an important topic for us? So we've got people in person here. We've got people online. Everybody's business is a little bit different. Some people are just starting out. Some people already have contracts. Some people just got their first contract. Congratulations. Why do we need to know that? Well, we all kind of want to know because we want to know what's expected of us, right? If you sign a contract with the government, you're called a prime, and you want to know what they're going to ask you. Okay, makes sense. If you're not a prime contractor, but you're a subcontractor to somebody else, so say that you have a big company and you're one of their suppliers, you need to know which regulations flow down to you, okay? Not all of them will. They'll tell you which ones do, okay? So I'm going to use Boeing because that's the company here in St. Louis. They hire a lot of subcontractors. They will tell you which rules apply to you. It might not be all of them that they have to follow, but they'll tell you which one. Okay. It's not, I don't want this to be the elephant in the room, but there's legal requirements if these, rules are ignored, okay? It's the government. They can fine you or worse. You don't want that to happen, okay? So that's why you just want to get familiar with these, especially if you're just starting out, because that way you know what's expected of you. So, for example, don't give a government employee cash or Super Bowl tickets or anything over $20. Don't do it, okay? They can't take it, and if they do take it, you're both going to be in trouble. So things like that are okay in the commercial world, it's different with the government because they're using our money, okay? We have to hold them to a different standard. Okay. So today's goal, really we can't cover everything. There's like thousands of rules, okay? If you think about the federal government, every single state, every single city within every state, there's too many to go over one by one. But I want to show you what you're going to see and where to find more information, okay? Every contract and every type of client, so think like construction versus like IT, computer software, there are different rules applied to different kinds of businesses. So my goal is to tell you what you're going to see and where to find it. If you need more help, let's say you have a contract or you're bidding on something and you need more like legal help, we have people that we can refer you to that are specific experts with government stuff, okay? So anytime you need that, just let me know. Okay, so when you think of the government, think of each level as a different customer, okay? Each of them is going to have their different rules. So the federal government has rules, and some of these agencies will have their own rules. Same with the state. So the state has rules, Each agency might have their own, and then local, the city has their own rules, the county has their own rules, school districts have their own rules, right? So think about each government agency as a separate customer, okay? Now the rules are all gonna be similar, right? Don't give your contracting officer Super Bowl tickets, okay? They're gonna be similar, but they might be worded differently and they'll have a different number or a different title, okay? Okay, so the FAR, S-A-R, hey, how's it going? Stands for Federal Acquisition Regulation, okay? And just so you can sound super smart anytime you talk to somebody, they call it FAR, no S at the end, just FAR, not FARs, okay? Doesn't necessarily mean anything bad if you say FARs, but they'll probably look at you like, huh, that's a little weird. This is the rule book for federal buying. This is a website where it looks like. We're going to talk about each of these different parts. And again, the goal of this is so that things can be fair, so that people can't just give contracts to their friends. Does that happen? We hope not, but it would be worse if we didn't have this, right? And so remember, when you look at these slides, there's the links in the bottom right corner for more information, or at least the link to get to what we're looking at here. So there's 53 parts of the FAR. So when we talk about the federal, this is just what Uncle Sam is buying. So this isn't what the state of Missouri is buying. This isn't what St. Louis County or St. Louis City is buying, but what Uncle Sam, the federal government, is buying. What they are is they're regulations written to implement statutes that Congress passes, okay? So what happens first is that Congress will pass a law, a statute in the Code of Federal Regulations, and then the agencies will write regulations to implement those laws, okay? So Congress does it first. They decide what the rule is going to be, and then the FAR is how they actually enforce that rule, okay? These rules exist to protect the government and our money, and also to protect you, okay, as a business, as a contractor. So I'm going to say this probably 50 times today. There's a lot of rules. You don't have to know all of them. You can't know all of them. That would be incredible if you could. Only a small number are going to apply to any given contract. And it'll tell you on the contract what applies. And then, like I said a little bit earlier, if you were here at the very beginning, it will also determine what type of contractor you are. Construction contracts are going to have different rules than IT contracts, or if you're supplying products, the rules are going to be different depending on what type of business you have. Yeah, question.
You're not responsible for knowing all the rules, are you accountable for not knowing them, or they just get disqualified? They go, wow, you're in trouble, you said this, they go, oh, this doesn't fit, see ya.
So the question was, if you're not responsible for knowing all of them, are you held to them? The ones that are in your contract that you sign that you'll agree to. But that's not all of them. So it depends on the type of contract. And we're going to talk about the different types. And I'll also show you some examples of what they look like.
Well, there's no ignorance defense. I mean, if there's a billion of these rules and regs, you're responsible for the ones that are in your contract.
Yes.
And they're cemented because you're dealing with the government.
So yes, correct. So the statement was, let's say there's 2 billion rules. Yes, you are responsible for the ones that you sign off that you'll agree to. Only the ones that are in your contract. Yes. Yeah.
So, I thought that the CFR was a system and the FAR was acquisition. But does the CFR actually address acquisition?
So the FAR is one piece of the code of the CFR. So the CFR is like huge. Okay. And then the FAR is just one piece of it. Gotcha. Yep.
Oh, I was thinking 2 CFR. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. I think it's part of 48. Yeah,
I should have picked first before I hit yes. It's 2022 pages. The FAR is.
The FAR 2022 pages. Yeah, you can get it printed. You can get a book of the FAR. It's really heavy. It's like 2 bricks worth, and it's like size 7.5 font. I use the the virtual one. Yeah. Okay, so you're gonna see lots of numbers and letters. I know it's kind of small down here at the bottom, but there is like a method to it, okay? So the numbering system is like a big umbrella, like a hierarchy. So you have big parts, then you have subparts, then you have sections and subsections and paragraphs. So every number means something. The closer the number is to the left, the bigger the category. The closer the number or letter is to the right, the more specific the rule is. So for example, there's one down here at the bottom, 15.403-1. So it's part 15, subpart 4, section 403, subsection 1, paragraph A. There's also a paragraph B, C, D. It just refers to like one specific rule, okay? So that's how it's organized. So you're gonna see, I'm gonna show you in a second, each part is basically a different topic. And then as you grow on the numbers, like the 0.403-1A, those are gonna be specific to that topic. So you can navigate your way around here, okay? Okay, so here's the 52 parts in a gist, okay? Parts 1 through 4 is the general information, how the FAR is set up. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Part 2 has the glossary. Okay, that's important.
Glossaries in the front.
The glossary is in the front, not in the back. That's true. Yeah, that's a good thing. You're going to see different topics here. Not all of them apply to contractors, you. A lot of them apply to the employees. Okay, so like, for example, parts 13 through 18, contracting methods and types, those are instructions for the contracting officers on how to write the contract, what type of contract they can use. So again, not all of these are going to be for you necessarily, okay? So we're going to talk about some specific ones that I see a lot, right? Okay, this is not anything that I think you have to memorize, but just in case you hear these terms, if it's a provision, kind of think about that as like PR, like pre, like before. Those are for solicitation, so before the contract's awarded. Again, this isn't anything that I think you have to memorize, but just in case you hear these words. So provisions are before a contract is awarded. So those are kind of like the rules to follow for the employees. Clauses are really what you're looking for, because this is what applies after you get awarded. Those are the rules that you have to pay attention to. And then if you ever see prescriptions, notice that PRE at the beginning, that's the prefix. That is even before you get to a contract. That's what the contracting officer has to do. They have to pay attention to those. Some of these clauses that you'll be held responsible for will be in the contract summary, like this is a construction project. This is a firm fixed price, meaning you have to give us a price and we agree to it or we don't agree to it, right? Some of them will be kind of basic, like don't participate in human trafficking. Don't bribe your contracting officer. So again, some of the rules are kind of like, you already know them, right? Yeah, don't send multiple gifts. So actually it's like, it can't be more than, so the comment was referring to like the $20 limit. So it's actually, even if you gave multiple $19 gifts, that's below the $20 threshold, it can't go above $50 in a year. Yeah. Not specifically for them. You cannot buy somebody specifically lunch. Like if you have like coffee in your office or like donuts, that's okay, but don't buy anything specifically for them, basically. And like there's a rule that outlines all the different things that you can and cannot do. Yeah, like if they're there for like everybody as opposed to you're buying it specifically for that person. Yeah. All right, so they do update the FAR regularly. Currently, it's going through what's called an overhaul. Now that is, when it's all done, it will be helpful because it's supposed to simplify this, right? We know that this is a lot of information. We're already kind of getting into that. The overhaul is supposed to simplify some of this stuff, okay? So if you click on this link, so anytime you see the blue underlined, it's a hyperlink, okay? So like, for example, this one takes you to a law firm's YouTube video that talks about the overhaul, the specific government contracting lawyer, okay? In addition, you also have those more info buttons at the bottom. So there's a bunch of different stuff on here, okay? So the second big bullet point here, some agencies have what's called supplements, and that's specific to their agency. So the first bullet point here that says DFARS, that makes sense because the Department of Defense is going to have additional rules that other departments don't need, right? So depending on the agency and what they need, they might have some additional rules. I'm gonna show you an example of that later, okay? If you click on this more info button, it will take you to a list of all the different supplements, but here's just a couple of examples. So even housing and urban development, they have a lot of grant money. They spend a lot of grant money. They give money to cities and states. So there's specific rules about it, okay? Environmental protection has their own supplement. And so if you have a contract with the EPA or you want to bid on one, it will tell you exactly what's required in the contract when you look at it, okay? It won't be a surprise. It might be some reading, but it won't be a surprise. Okay, so again, I want to show you where to find more information depending on what you need. Okay, so here's my example. So what's the most important part of the FAR? Whatever is in your contract, okay? That's the most important. So I know it's a little bit small here, but like here's two examples. So see this first one that says 52.2521. So that's a rule that's in the FAR. And then the one below it, the VAAR, that's the Veterans Administration Acquisition Regulation. So it'll tell you exactly what rules are in there. Sometimes they'll even be hyperlinked and you can just click on that. Otherwise, you just copy and yes, good question. So yeah. So the dates that you see here on the right is the date that that rule was implemented. So some of them you can see have been around for a while. So this is a contract that I pulled this afternoon for the VA, the John Cochran Hospital here in St. Louis. This is a real VA contract. We can look at it at the end if we want. But basically it will tell you exactly what is required. So like some of them, you probably aren't going to do anything different than you normally would. Like for example, this one that's rule number 2.4, 52.22236, equal opportunity for disabilities. Okay, so don't discriminate against people. I mean, that's like what you would already be doing, right? So some of them, it's not extra work. It's just like holding you to that standard. So that means that like, for example, this, so see how this has a new date? It's part of that overhaul. So what they're letting you know is it's a deviation from the old rule and it's a new one. No, the November 2025 is the new one. Yeah. It's so the VA does, they do a lot of details on here. It's saying a deviation probably from the old one and it was part of that overhaul that they're doing. So this is the new date. So if you Googled that number, it might be different than the number it was before November 2025. But if you Google it, whatever you Google and go to the actual .gov website, that'll be what you're looking for. Yeah.
So just say an example in my work, like it could be that they've updated it, but the one that's governing your award is the older version. So you need to make sure to go and find the right one because that's the one that governs your award.
So yeah, that's a good point.
And you'll see it. That's why they put all these details.
The version that applies to my contract, in my contract, correct?
Yeah, so
I won't have to wonder, was it November 5 or is it August?
yeah, so the one that will apply, so the conversation going on is like these dates specifically are going to tell you which one applies to your contract. So for example, if this contract was like a contract that they did 5 years ago and they're recompeting it, it would have like a similar rule, but the number might be different and it might be a different rule from like, 1998 or something. So whatever it says in the current contract is what you want to pay attention to. Yeah. Good thought. Good comment there.
On the 2.1, 2.2, and so on, what is that? Is that a section or what is it? How come it's like going like 2 point and then
Yeah.
it jumps out to 4.1?
So the question is, what are these numbers? Like 2.1, 2.2, 2.3? That's just the way the VA organized this document. So out of this is section 2. They titled section 2 on their contract as instructions, conditions, and other statements. So they're calling that section 2, and then here's the rules that are section 2. I don't know why it skips ahead to skip 3. I'd have to go back and like look at it.
So
We could look at it at the end. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. So the comment was the VA could have, like a different section 3 that doesn't apply to this contract. And so they're just not including it because it doesn't apply. Yeah, because remember, so it's not just numerical because remember, every contract's not going to have every rule.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah,
That's what-
good conversation.
why that, like on the left, the right hand side, it's got 31, 32. That's the page.
These are the page numbers on the right. Yeah.
And then one other question.
Mhm.
On 4.1.52 and 52, part 52 is clauses and forms.
hmm
Okay, and then you say that the VA is adding information here. Is that why they put a prefix in there of 8?
So that's why you see the VAAR. So that's just their numbering system. So the 852, it's probably for the VA, their section 8 goes with clauses. That's probably
So
why.
the 52 is still the same part. And
It means it's like related. So for whatever reason, the VA just like decided that it would be easier for everybody to understand if like the 52 matched the FAR 52, probably. Yeah.
The agency have its own numbering system.
Mhm.
to look at.
Yeah, so each agency does have their own numbering system. So, like for example, if we go back a slide. So here's all of the different regulations. So you see here on the left where it says FAR, and then you have all of the other supplements for the different agencies. So if we just click on a random one, just because I don't want to click on VA because I want to see how different it is. So if we click this Department of Treasury, their part numbers are in the thousands. So, okay, so like here's an example right here. So like part 1009, that's going to coordinate to part 9 of the FAR because that's the same topic, contractor qualifications. So if we go to like part 9 of the FAR, contractor qualifications. So they're doing that on purpose so that people can see that they're like related. Same thing with like this one, number 2, the definition. So this is again the Treasury one. Yeah, this like correlates to FAR part 2. Yeah, those are good conversations here.
we have to kind of go back and see, first of all, what agency you're dealing with, and then to try to understand, how they're numbering it in accordance to the FAR, how they correlate. In other words, right?
Yeah, so when you're looking at your contract, it will be listed on there. So like, for example, the VA has them in order the way that they want it. So 252, so I'm looking at this first one up here. So 252-1 is probably like in the order that they want it. Like they want that one to be first, and then they have their other 52, 228, 70. So it looks like those numbers, I haven't looked at all of the supplements because I focus mostly on Department of Defense, but it looks like most of the supplements, the numbers are going to be similar so that you know that that's a clause, right? Or if it's a number 9, that's a contractor qualifications because number 9 is contractor qualifications for the regular FAR. So they're just they set it up that way to make it easier for you probably. Okay, so we're just going to go through some of the parts. So what I have here is the link that will take you directly to that part at the top, and then more information about that part with the link at the bottom. So let me show you an example. So for this first one, this is FAR Part 1. If I click the title, it's going to take me directly to FAR Part 1. And you can see it's kind of like that hierarchy, the little tabs. As it goes further to the right, it's more specific. These are all the different subparts. So like here, subpart 1.2. Okay, gets more and more specific. But then the other link is going to take you to a resource just about that section. So this is that law firm that I was talking about. And what we're seeing here is an ad. But basically, it's this government contracting lawyer talking about part 1 of the FAR. Okay, so again, we can't cover everything today just because there's so many things, but I wanted to give you as much information as I could. I'm sorry? Yeah, Jennifer. Yeah, job titles of employees. So part 1 is all just about how the FAR is set up. So how it's organized, the different parts, the subparts, deviations and exceptions to any rules will be outlined there. And then the roles and responsibilities of government employees. So here's one that I definitely want you to remember. Different job titles have different authority, okay? So let's say that you're on Scott Air Force Base. This happened to an actual client of mine. Scott Air Force Base, some random person asked them to do additional work because the work needed to be done, right? However, that was not their contracting officer, was not their CO, or sometimes they call it KO in the military. Only your contracting officer can make official contract changes. So what happened was basically my client did that work for free because it was somebody in a uniform. It was somebody who looked like they had authority. They asked her to do it. She did it, and she can't get paid for it. Sometimes if they're really, really nice, you can ask them to pay for it. They won't always, especially if it's not in the budget. Okay. Somebody have a question?
So she can't go back.
So there's nothing really that she can do. So she asked if they would add that to her contract as what's called a modification or a change, and they said they would not.
That government employee should also
yeah.
funds for an unauthorized obligation, right?
So the comment was maybe that government employee should have some sort of repercussion, and that may be the case, but we don't know. They are not supposed to tell you stuff to do if they're not a contracting officer. But again, knowing all the rules might not be in their job description, so maybe they don't know, right? So if there's one thing I want you to take away from today, besides the website, don't do any work that's not on your contract unless you just feel like it, because they won't necessarily pay you.
Now, okay, now I have a question.
Okay, question.
Yeah, the government is different from private industry, but both are human beings, administered by human beings. So
Both commercial and government are administered by human beings. Yes.
So human beings and benefits. So if this is my first or even second contract, is it how wise is it to play, Larry the lawyer, and no, you're not the contracting officer. I mean,
so yeah, no, that's a great question. That's a business question. Right. So
if I do it, no, I'm not going to get paid. But if I do it, am I exposing myself to anything? Like on a military base, if I do work, I don't get paid for it. But am I liable for being on the base for, let's say, 6 days of work? You weren't supposed to be on it. You're the contract. You finished what you were supposed to do, but you're here 6 days. Meaning, would I be liable for trespass or something? And I'm not paid for it.
Yeah, so I hope you can hear. I hope you can hear this good discussion. I'm trying to stand close to the people talking because we've got a really good discussion here. So if you're online, I hope you've heard that. But basically, if they ask you to do work, but it's not in your contract, and something goes wrong, are you liable? And the answer is maybe. So you could probably make an argument that somebody told you to, and you thought you really needed to. You thought it was a pressing matter, but that's why you have a contracting officer. So when you have questions, so let's say that you're getting ready to start and you just signed your contract, your contracting officer is there for you because they want the work done, right?
They're always available to. Or they-
theoretically, like you can schedule time to talk to them. Like if you have any questions about what's in the contract, you know, they're your person. Sometimes they even have what's called a contracting officer representative. So it's a second person that can help you explain stuff. Don't do any work because they can't sign your contract, but they can help you understand it. Same thing with a contracting specialist, the scope of work they can help with. Absolutely. So these are people who are there for you. They want the work done. They want you to be successful. They don't want bad things to happen, but occasionally, yeah. Questions?
Order or something similar be executed if the scope changes.
Okay.
Not if, but when.
So question was, could a change order or something similar be executed if the scope changes, not if, but when? Yes, so they will discuss that with you. We will talk about that. Can't remember exactly which part that is. Contract modifications can happen with or without your permission. But if it changes like the time frame or the amount that you have to do or the people you have to hire, they have to like give you an equitable cost adjustment. So it can change, but they will have to communicate that with you in writing. They can't just say, hey, go do that and we'll pay you. Like, no, get that in writing. We call that a change order. So that's a great question. Just while we're talking about that, let me see what section that is.
Contracting language can be a little bit overwhelming. Probably put it in.
The question was, can you put it in Chat GPT and simplify it? I mean, maybe to help you understand it better, but I would like, yeah, I would ask like your contracting officer first. So there's also question and answer. So you can email them before the contract's due and you can ask them questions.
That's what contracting, he's one of the real.
The real intelligence. I mean, I think that was a great point that you made, that we are all human, right? Things happen. The government is not out to get you. Like they want the stuff that you're providing, right? So mistakes do happen. They'll work with you if they can. But what I meant by that earlier was that if it's not in the budget and you do work that wasn't approved, they don't have to pay you. You know what I mean? But like they can be overwhelming. That's why a lot of these law firms will explain it really clearly. That's why I linked so many of those videos. We also do trainings on specific types, like we do a lot on like limitations on subcontracting. That's like a specific rule. And so those are things that we can talk about like one-on-one. So let's say you want to bid on a contract, you just email me and be like, hey, can we set up an hour and a half and go through this, right? So that's why Apex is here. And then if we can't help you, then we'll refer you to a lawyer. Yeah. So your contract would pay that lawyer because you would build that into your expenses, basically, your business expenses. Yeah. Some of the lawyers will talk to you for free. They'll give you some like basic advice, but if it's very specific to you and it counts as legal advice, then they have to bill you legally because they're giving you specific stuff. But you can get a lot of information without paying people. Yeah. So changes and modifications allowed by the government. So things that they typically might change, drawings, designs, or specs, if it's like a construction project, the way that they want something shipped or packed, especially if you're sending it to a military base, delivery location, again, military bases, description of services. So they can change those. If it causes you a plus or minus cost or time, right? So if it's going to take you more time to do it, they have to make you an adjustment in your contract price or give you more time to do it or both. Okay. Yes, they have to make official changes before you have to start that change. Yeah. So it'll be like a form that you fill out and they will write out exactly what they want you to do and you'll sign it and they'll sign it. So again, if somebody other than the contracting officer asks you to do something, they're not required to pay you. So these can be super overwhelming. So that's why we have kind of these introductory ones. Like, so today you're just kind of getting a taste of it. And then when you look through a real contract, that's when we can set up a time to talk, you know, one-on-one about what is exactly specific to your contract. So 2.1, so this is the glossary. So again, you can click on that title, it'll take you directly to the glossary. It also has a lot of frequently asked questions, so it can be really helpful. For example, this word, change order, means a written order signed by the contracting officer, okay? Like that's the definition. So if they ask you to do something and they don't sign it and you don't sign it, it's not an official change order, okay? Not binding, exactly, yeah. So like this word here, shall. So I just took these quotes directly out of the glossary. Shall denotes the imperative. So that's a really fancy way of saying if it's shall, you have to do it. If it says must, you have to do it. If it says may or should, it's encouraged. They want you to do it, but you're not bound to that, okay? Okay, so we talked about this a little bit earlier, but part 3 is about ethics and improper business practices. So I don't think anything in here is like super outlandish except maybe the buying them stuff like you would with a commercial client. But most of this stuff is just like good business practices, right? Like don't bribe people. I mean, don't give people like tips like, hey, if I get this contract, I'll slide some money your way. Don't do that. Like that's just kind of, you know, conflicts of interest. So like if your brother is in charge of something, they might look poorly on that, right? Because they even maybe if there's not a conflict of interest, it might look like there is. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. That's what they're looking for. But it also has protections for whistleblowers, and that is in part 3. Okay. All right. That's also, sorry to go back to it. This is also things that can get you in like legal trouble. Okay. So for example, if you bribe a contracting officer or somebody else in the government that's responsible for giving you a contract, they're not just going to kick you off that contract. They're going to suspend you and you might do some jail time. Okay. So these are things that would get you in trouble. These are not things that happen like usually by accident. Okay. Maybe the buying you lunch might be an accident, but like that's not going to, these are things that like you shouldn't be doing. Okay. Okay. So 9.1, we've talked about this several times if you've been in any of our trainings over the last 5 weeks. So part 9.1 is all about contractors. So what do they expect from you? Okay. They call it responsible contractors. Okay. So what do they expect from you? If you've been here, you've heard me say this lots of times. They want you to have money to get the contract started. Okay. Adequate financial resources. They want you to have experience doing the work. That's your past performance. They want you to have a satisfactory integrity and business ethic records, like so you have not gone to jail for bribing people, okay? I did actually get a phone call this morning from somebody who was approached by a subcontractor and they Googled that person's name and that person has gotten in legal trouble for funneling money to terrorist organizations. And they said, I just want to make sure I should not go into business with them. And I said, if you do, they're going to find out and that's not going to look good for you, right? They will look your business up, right? So if I'm a prime contractor and I have that guy's name, his business on my team, they're going to look that up, okay? So go into business with people that you know and you trust, right? I'll take these commas off. Sorry, I forgot to take them off. Organization, experience, accounting. They want to make sure that you're in business and you're ready to go. Okay. And then we kind of talked about this a little bit in a previous class, so earlier in the month. But if you're in construction, they want you to have like the equipment that you need, like beforehand, because if they say, okay, we're signing the contract, we want you to start in 2 weeks. They don't want to wait for you to like get that, Bobcat or whatever the equipment is. So they want you really, if you're bidding on something, they want you to be pretty much ready to go. Okay. All right, so this was important if you sell things that are commonly purchased by non-government people. That could be a product or a service. So things like general janitorial, lawn care, IT software, things that are not specifically for the government. They're not made for the government. They're not modified for the government. They call those commercial items. So this is part 12. Sometimes you hear it called commercial off the shelf. That's just anybody could buy that product or service, not just a product. It can be services too. Okay. And so there's just different rules for that. Typically, the cybersecurity requirements are a little bit less. So it's just something specific. So think about what you want to sell. Is it something that's purchased often by people outside of the government? It's probably a commercial item. There's just different types of contracts that they use for commercial items. So for example, we've used this example before. Let's say that you're selling like paper products. So think like paper towels, toilet paper, napkins, printer paper, like reams of paper, things like that. Office supplies, yeah. So that's commercial off the shelf. So they have rules specifically for those. It's like they would include a rule like, we're probably going to take the cheapest option. We don't necessarily care how long you've been in business. They'll look at that. But like if it's between you and somebody else and your experience is the same, they're going to go with the lowest price. So that's a rule that's listed in there that they're supposed to follow. Okay. And that's to save money. But you see what I mean? Like the rules are going to be different depending on what they're buying.
Bid so I can see that.
Yes, it would be listed in the bid so you can see it. It would say commercial products or services. It would be listed under part 12.
Well,
no, you won't be surprised. You won't be surprised.
Clear.
Yes, it will tell you that by the clause. It will also tell you in the evaluation criteria, we're looking for the lowest price. Let's say you're doing a contract that's not a product, but like a service. Let's say like IT maintenance or something, or like, something like a technical maintenance, they might not say we're looking for the lowest price. It might say something like price and experience are equal, or it might say lowest price technically acceptable, meaning they're going to look at your experience and the price, right? And so they will tell you exactly what they're looking for. Sometimes they'll even give you a weighted percentage. Like we're going to put 50% of your evaluation on your price or 50% on your experience. It will tell you what they're looking for. Yeah. If you see this 52, so 52 just refers to like clauses in your contract. 52 to 12, see the 12 correlates with that. These are your terms and conditions for commercial contracts. Things like how do they want you to send invoices? It's probably all electronic at this point. Any warranties that need to go with your item, any liabilities specifically with like shipping, subcontracts, contract termination. So just, again, different rules, similar, but slightly different depending on what they're buying. Okay, so 14 and 15. So if you're in construction, you want to put a star next to 14, okay? Sealed bidding. That means that they're not going to look at anything until the due date, and they're going to open them all on the same day, okay? Sometimes they will decide the same day, but usually if it's construction and they require a proposal with like plans and stuff, usually they can't decide the same day, but they won't look at them in advance. That makes sure that everybody's kind of on the same page, right? Yeah. So a proposal would be if they want you to explain to them how you would do it, as opposed to this is exactly what we want, just give us a price.
Well, yeah.
And yeah, time frames, things like that. So it'll tell you, so these rules, part 14 talks about the timelines. They have to have a pre-bid conference, how they open them. So are they going to open them in person? Usually if they do, they will do it like on a Zoom so that anybody can watch it happen, right? Just to keep things fair, keep everything on the up and up. And then how they can award it, okay? 15, negotiated acquisition. So this is not sealed. So this is 15 is a lot of stuff. Okay. Competitive is what you would normally think of if it's not construction and it's not office supplies. It means they're going to look at everybody's proposals or bids and they're going to choose the best value to the government. So it's not always the lowest price, best value. It'll tell you if there's like a percentage weight on there.
Well, how do I know what they consider?
So how do you know what they consider best value? They should outline it in there. Like they'll tell you, usually they'll tell you like a percentage. We're going to put this percentage towards your experience. Or we're only going to accept people who have 3 years of experience or something. Like they'll outline what they're looking for.
That's why the contract. Another particular process. Then it'll be like, at least about 6-7 pages. It'll be like the 4th or 5th page where it'll outline exactly what they're looking for, what your qualifications need to be in order to get that contract.
So I know whether or not
Yep, whether
So
or
we'll
not,
see,
like
it's
if
an
you
element.
off
This is the
something,
part how,
yeah, like
what good
if
of a
you,
chance.
exactly, like if you missing one thing, but you got everything else,
Yeah.
you can still put your bid in for it, but somebody else
One thing
may,
and I'm missing the other.
yeah, then that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
That was a great explanation.
Yeah.
So we call that like I hope you heard that online. So she was explaining like, if you're looking at Missouri buys, they usually will have a percentage on like, here's the things that we're looking for, and if you have 8 out of 9, probably a good idea to submit. If you have 1 out of 9, maybe not. Yeah. So we call that the bid or no bid process, right? So that's kind of like the research that you do beforehand to decide, is it worth your time? So one of the things that I shared in one of the other ones was, one of the other programs was my guide on like how to review a solicitation and write a proposal. And so, for example, like after you find one that you like, here's the things that I suggest to figure out, like, is it worth it for you? So ask yourself questions like, is this opportunity aligned with our strategy? Is it beneficial to us? So I will put this on the last slide of today's slideshow, just in case you didn't have it from one of the other slide decks. So I will put it in there so you can get it at the end.
So presentation or just that one slide that you were showing?
So the presentation, I'm going to put the link to this whole thing. Yeah.
And how do I, another question, how do I find out how many people I'm competing against?
How do you find out how many people you're competing against? Sometimes you know and sometimes you don't. Some websites will give you what's called a plan holder list, and it will give you a list of every single person who's downloaded the documents. Other times they don't give you anything. It just depends on the agency. So I looked at a Kane County, Illinois contract with somebody yesterday in the office, and there was like 178 people who downloaded it, but you could tell that some of them weren't real IT companies. Like it said, like one of them was me, right? I downloaded it. So if you see something that says Apex, I'm not bidding on that, right? If you see something that says like proposal, gov proposal assistance, they're probably not bidding on it either, right? So some of the agencies will tell you how many people. Well, like I opened it up because I was helping a client, and they could have been like paid proposal writers or something. So there's a lot of different reasons. Can you be used as an alibi? I don't know if it tells you what time you clicked it. Another way to think about how many people you're going to be competing against. Oh, whoa, we are out of time. Another way to think about that is, we had such a good conversation. You can look at previous contracts, and sometimes you can figure out how many people have bid. Federal, you can. State, I don't think it tells you, but yeah, yeah. Yeah. Only they have to, so yeah, sole source, they've determined only one person can do it. Usually it's like a special kind of software.
I can't.
You'll see a lot of sole source contracts to Boeing, 'cause they're the only ones that can do it. Okay, so it is 7 o'clock. So we've had such a good conversation that we are kind of at the end of our time. So if you need to pop out, feel free. Otherwise, I'm just going to show you what else is in the slideshow, and that way you can look at it. So part 19, small business programs. Okay. 22, if you're in construction, put a star next to 22, labor laws and employment requirements. Okay. If you're in construction, you have to pay your people a certain amount per hour. Okay. Same thing with certain kinds of services. Okay. And then basic stuff like non-discrimination policies, working conditions, follow OSHA regulations, and with that. Okay. These are just some specifics. So Sonia, I put this in here for you. These are some specific clauses that have to do with wages. If you have any IP, intellectual property, part 27. So if you're in any innovative tech, write down number 27. 31, what you can bill for. So sometimes you just give them a price and you say, okay, here's my price. Other times, it depends on the type of contract. You're going to bill as you go, depending on how much it costs. So those are different sorts of contracts. These are called cost reimbursable versus fixed price. So if it's a cost reimbursable project, you're kind of paid as you go and you invoice them. Okay. It depends on the type of contract. It'll tell you when you look at it, which one it is. They call it fixed price, firm fixed price. Yep. 33, protest, disputes, appeals. If you have a problem with the government, there's a specific way that they want you to handle that without suing them. Okay. So you go through like written documentation and mediation, and they try to fix it before it gets to a lawsuit. Communicating with your contracting officer is essential if things start to go wrong. If you need a GovCon attorney, we can send you some names. Okay. Doesn't happen super often, but it happens. If you're in construction and architecture engineer, write down 36. This talks about specific things for how they contract with construction firms. So 36. If you're not in construction, that's another group that you don't need to know about. Okay. Things like timelines, what they expect out of your Gantt charts, things like that. 43, we talked about this one a little bit. This is your changes and modifications. Make sure you get it in writing. If they change it and it costs you money, they're supposed to pay you for that. Okay. Usually I haven't seen very much problems with that. There's two kinds of terminations. We're gonna go through this really quick. Termination for convenience. That means it's not your fault. The government just decided they didn't need it anymore. Okay. There are some things that you can still get paid for. So if they tell you they're terminating your contract, read over 49.2. Okay. And yes, they have to give you written notice for that. If it is your fault, if something goes wrong, they call that termination for default or for cause. Okay. Again, they'll tell you before that happens. They'll tell you like, hey, things are not going well. But they can terminate you if they feel it's necessary, if they think the work's not going to get done or it's not getting done. You don't want that to happen. Work with your contracting officer as best you can, because you don't want any kind of like black mark on your record, right? You don't want to have to tell people you're terminated for cause. If they terminate you for cause, it's kind of like your current.
Oh, I was fine.
Kinda. It kind of is like your permanent federal record. Yeah. At least for a few years. It's not forever. Usually it's like 3 to 5 years. Depends on what it is. Limitations on subcontracting. So depending on the type of contract it is, if the contract is set aside for a certain group, like a small business, the small business has to do a certain percentage of the work. That means that you can't just subcontract out 99% of the work, because then the work's not really going to a small business and the government wasted its time. Okay. Why do they have that limitation? Straight from the source is cheaper. The government's using our tax dollars. They don't want a bunch of middleman where it's going to raise the price. Okay. And they also are required by law to give small businesses opportunities whenever possible. Okay. Non-manufacturer rules. So we've talked about this in some other classes this year, but basically, if you are selling stuff to the government that you are not creating, make sure you're a small business, you're getting it from another small business, and you actually, by law, are supposed to take ownership or possession of the item. So we kind of got into a discussion about that in week 3, I think. That's the rule. I'm just telling you what the rule is, okay? There's some cybersecurity stuff. So if you want to sell to the federal government, you got to have locks on your doors. Your employees have to have passwords. You have to have virus protection, things like that. If you want to sell to the DoD, you absolutely have to have this, and maybe even more. Okay. State and local laws, different depending on every state. Okay. So Missouri's is through the Office of Administration. You'll see that they're numbered, kind of similar to what we saw before. Okay. You can click on those pictures to get you there. Most states will have some sort of website that tells you like how best to do business with us. So I've put a couple neighboring ones: Missouri, City of St. Louis County, Illinois, Kansas. Those are the websites that tell you how to do business with those states. Okay. Okay. So again, similar to federal, read over the contract to get what rules apply to that contract. Okay. If you have questions, there's usually a question and answer period. It will tell you like there's a deadline. So over here on the left-hand side where you see the yellow box, there's a deadline for comments and questions. It also tells you who to send those questions to. So if you have a question, email them and ask them. Okay. Closing thoughts. There's a lot of rules, but they're there to protect you and also our tax dollars. Okay. They can be overwhelming at the beginning, especially because at the end we went so fast here, right? But there's lots of resources. We can schedule time one-on-one to chat if you want. It's in your best interest to learn them. Again, not every rule will apply to every contract. So just start with what the contract says, okay? 53 parts. You're not going to see all 53 parts on your contract. You're just not. And then since there's more rules to selling federal, this is just like our Apex advice. Build your experience in the commercial sector in smaller governments first, because there's less rules. Okay, just a little bit easier to do. Yeah. If you have to hop out, I totally understand it. We will not be offended. Yeah, number 3.
So is there a way that I can contractor use my past experience, get letters of recommendation from other businesses that I've transacted commerce with and smaller governments?
Yeah, so the question was, can you use, how do you use your personal experience to sell to the federal government or smaller governments? The way that you phrase that depends on the way that the contract reads. So the contract might say key personnel. That's you. You've got 12 years of experience doing that, and you write that out. Missouri's pretty good about that. The state of Missouri will ask for key personnel experience. So then you have no problem. Other times, if it says your business must have 3 similar projects serving government agencies, then it's kind of like, I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to move on to the next one. So look specifically at what they are evaluating. But the way that you get around that being honest but also showing what you can do is you just say key personnel experience. You're being honest. You're saying my business is new, but I'm not new, right? I've been in this. I know how to do this. Key personnel experience. And it'll depend on the contract whether they will allow that or not. Key personnel experience. Yep. Oh my gosh, you guys are troopers. Went through so much information there. It's 7:09. You gotta get home, get some rest, get some dinner. I'll hang out. We'll probably leave this room and go out in the hallway so Regina can lock up this room, but I'll hang out for